Oh, my realization story? I'll make it simple. I didn't even know that, like trans was a word. Like, I didn't know it was a thing until I was about 21. Like, I think I remember typing into Google, like, what if you're a boy but you feel like you're a girl? I came across this really old website, which is still around, I think. It was called TS Roadmap, so like Transsexual Roadmap. It was a very archaic looking website from the 90s. And it's just like so like text filled and it's like walls of text. And I was looking at this and I'm like, that seems like a lot of money and a lot of surgery and all this other stuff. And I was so confused, but I had this word. Around that same time, I met my husband. And, like, I was just like, well, maybe I can make it work, like maybe I can make it work, like being a gay man, right? Maybe that's my identity. It worked for a while. I mean, like, I think that the, like the rigors of the job that I'd chosen, which I worked and still do work as a director of photography. So like very hard, long days of work, like 18 hours, like a day kind of jobs that you'll like run for like weeks at a time. No breaks. So like it's easy to push off elements of identity when, like you can live your job. There came a point where gay marriage was legalized in Colorado, and well, actually, it was domestic partnerships. So my husband and I talked, and we were like, okay, like we should probably get married. Like we've been together for so long, like might as well do this. And like I kind of had this kind of sense of guilt. I was like, oh my God, I feel like you should know the person, like that you're marrying, the person that, like we're making these, like quote unquote eternal vows to, right? I was just like, okay, I just need to, like I need to come clean. I need to sit down. I need to talk about this. I thought about it a lot, and I had started commissioning art of myself, my character as a girl. And like, I was just like, okay, well maybe this is how I live with this and experiment with this. And then I was like, no, I am trans. And like, I need to just sit down and have this conversation with Chip. We have like this hot tub that we took from my parents' old house in our backyard, and like we were out there sitting in the hot tub, and I just start crying. Like I'm just like a hot mess, and I turned to Chip and I'm just like, I think I'm trans, and he's just like, okay. And like I remember just sitting there and like I was just like, what? I mean, there's still a lot to work out. And there's still a lot of things to go through. But, like later on, I would find out that, like my husband had inadvertently, every single person he had ever dated, so like all 9 of the people that he'd ever dated had turned out to be trans after the relationships ended. Like, so they came out as trans afterwards, and I was just like, oh my God. So like I just made this astronomical statistic for a person that somehow has been magically attracted to trans people unintentionally. It's just one of those things that, like it takes a lot of time and a lot of understanding, and the best way to fight bigotry is education, right? So like I think that this is something that really speaks to another aspect of the trans experience, and that's this kind of idea of kind of like projecting and lashing out. A lot of times people lash out at things that they are insecure about. Right, like so you'll see a lot of like the quote unquote like internet chads and stuff like out there being like, oh, like trans people, and you're like, maybe that person, their egg hasn't cracked yet, right? Like maybe this person is just projecting, like maybe they're having a lot of difficulty with their own identity, and in order to feel okay about that, they have to push. It's definitely something that I see a lot in trolling communities, like varying communities out there on the internet that kind of just exist specifically to wreak havoc and cause trouble with LGBT folks and stuff. Like they all kind of have this very common theme, right? That it's a kind of a cross projection. They want to feel better about who they are, so they lash out at others. It's a weird way to feel better about yourself, I guess, but like I mean, like I think that it's just something, I guess, that the internet just encourages in its own weird way. Welcome to the world of the algorithm, right? It's so interesting, like trans experiences often kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways, but they also are very individualistic and unique. Your transition can be impacted even by the time in which you started. Right? Like I started my transition way back with like Obama, right? I remember when Trump came into power and I'm just like, oh shit, should I be moving to like Canada? Like, should I be getting the hell out of here? Like, what's going on? I think a fascinating part about the fandom is how people perceive and understand identity through their fursonas. Right? That's an interesting form of, it's a form of projection, right? Like a lot of, for example, a lot of trans people will try to project their kind of ideal self or, like their honest and true self into their character, right? There's a point of, like projection, like, which is often coming from like this sense of idealism. So like maybe when I was younger, I tried my hardest to be a guy, right? So I would project hyper masculinity, like by doing ultra guy things, right? And in that same sense, I think that a lot of people, when they create OCs and characters, kind of do the same thing. They might be projecting an ideal of what they want, or they might be trying to share an element of who they are. And those two things can kind of merge together, which leads me to another question that I had. I'm going to kind of start this out with a little bit of an explanation of, like where it kind of comes from for me. Like when I transitioned, obviously I've been like a furry for a while, and I'd had a lot of art. And I had art of myself and my husband. And, like that character was, in essence, for me, that form of projection, right? It was me trying to project this idealized view. And when I transitioned, like I started to look at that, and it became kind of a point of dissonance. I saw the character as something that wasn't me. And I think that, like a lot of folks deal with this in varying ways in their life. It's not just like a furry thing, right? Like we all have childhood photos or, like home movies or things like that represent us in our past. It took me a long time to get to a point where I could fully understand and appreciate it. But, like personally, the discussion about kind of like trying to hide and push that stuff away. I think we all go through points like that, where we really do want to just like wish that we could kind of erase it. And, like in a weird way, I almost feel like I came full circle and started to embrace it. This is who I am, but each one of these things added to who I am. Without the sum total of parts, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So it's kind of a weird duality, right? So really my question for y'all is, like, how do you personally deal with your past identities, like as you have existed maybe within fan-based communities or other kind of facets of life, like for example, like Emberly, you mentioned, like being super gay, right? Yeah, so how do you deal with that past self? Do you accept it? Do you embrace it? Is that a part of who you are, or do you push it away and try and erase it? Like here's the most important thing that you got to remember. People change. Right? Like I know a lot of folks out there like to believe that people can't change, but people do. As you grow up and as you, like go through life, like eventually you do have those moments where things become more real and you start to understand stuff. And like everybody was a little shit at some point. I was. So, like, are y'all familiar kind of with, so there's kind of like been in more recent fields of study, like there's been a lot of examination between the neurodivergence and kind of trans identity. Oh, so neurodivergence would be like a variety of spectrum disorders. So like spectrum disorders would be like maybe OCD, varying forms of autism, ADHD, ADD, God, I can't name them all. Basically, it's just you're not neurotypical. So neurotypical would be what, like a quote-unquote maybe like normie might be. So like take, for example, I am neurodivergent. I have OCD, and it's been something that I've dealt with in addition to everything else in my life. First, I was curious if y'all have been hearing about this, because I know it's been something that's being talked about a lot lately. I'm not a psychologist, and like I don't like possess a degree in any of these things, so I can't really state that factually, but I think that a lot of people are kind of postulizing that there is a link between these things, and it's really fascinating to me. I mean, like, as you probably can tell through this entire conversation, one of the most fascinating things to me really is understanding the workings of the mind. Like who we are as people, our identities, our existence. And I mean, I think that there's something to be said about, like the fact that, like maybe, like there are these connections out there, like as a trans person, maybe there is such a thing as being, like born different, right? Like you have your own, like existence and identity and everything, as it was kind of like, like it's the nature versus nurture debate, really, all over. For a little bit of background, my dad is a psychologist, and his particular field of study is early intervention with autism and varying forms of therapy and special education. So I mean, like that's kind of where a lot of my curiosity and stuff kind of comes from too, is just like being raised around that kind of stuff. It's not a definitive answer ever to any one thing. It's just a greater degree of understanding of maybe how like folks maybe develop and understand and grow and like become people. I think the only thing I can really add to that is that like when you're first coming out, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be hard to see the end of the road, like crossing that quote unquote finish line, but it happens faster than you think. It is a magical journey. It's more magical than you think. The scariest part is starting. As soon as you get moving, you're going to be fine. I mean, we got to stick together, like as a queer community, like we got to stick together, and like having those people, those advocates, the people that can stand by you, find those people in your life and keep them close, because those are the people that really do matter the most at the end of the day. I mean, life can be hard, but it's certainly a lot better with friends.